Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very, very warm welcome to today's edition of the DC Universe Daily. Yes, smash the like button if you love me, subscribe if you're new, please have your say. On today's show, we are asking, could James Gunn be the best thing to happen to DC? Because I've been in terms of James Gunn, haven't I? I've been a little bit inconsistent. Sometimes I've been positive, sometimes I've been negative, because basically this is a reactive sport, if you like, and it's difficult at times to know what the best thing is. I mean, you know, I have been up and down on James Gunn being the lead for DC now, the creative lead for DC, let alone my beloved, writing and directing my beloved Superman. So it's been very difficult for me, as well as being a fan of Zack Snyder and what he did with DC. We will talk about Zack Snyder and some very interesting, surprising comments he's made about the audience's reaction to Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. But let's talk about James Gunn. Could he be the best thing to happen to DC? Well, I've woken up on the side of the bed today that says yes, he could be the best thing to happen to DC. Now, that wasn't my opinion originally. I'm going to be absolutely honest about that, because I suppose it's really watching Guardians 3 and seeing the perfect way he climaxed that trilogy. But it's not just that. In recent interviews, he's been saying some very interesting things where he inadvertently is slaying Marvel Studios and what's become of them. One thing I do know about James Gunn, he watched the stuff we watched. He grew up watching Looney Tunes and Scooby-Doo. He loves it all. He loves entertainment at its pure form, as we do. And I've got a suspicion he's as pissed off with what's happened in New Hollywood as we are. And he does say some very interesting things. In a recent interview, he talks about quality over the result. What is he talking about? Well, Marvel Studios has become the place where the result is more important than the quality. And what's happened is, because the quality is no longer there, the result is no longer there. And basically, the entertainment industry, especially Hollywood, has become a very divisive place. Talking about Hollywood and New Hollywood and modern day entertainment has become a very divisive place when you're targeting great men like Chris Pratt, a very talented actor. Chris Pratt is everything that used to be great about Hollywood, but he's a straight white male who happens to be right-wing, who happens to go to church on Sundays, so of course cancel culture has to cancel him. Good luck with that. Never going to happen. Great guy, Chris can come over at DC. He's welcome at DC by this DC fan anytime. Very talented man, great dude, love him a lot. And the targeting, you know, is disgusting. Now they're targeting Freddie Highmore, aka Bates Motel, and The Good Doctor, apparently for the problematic representation of the character he plays. Freddie Highmore is one of the greatest young actors in the world today. And if the Yanks don't want you in Hollywood, my friend, come back to the UK, where you'll be more than welcome. The British will appreciate you because, of course, Britain is the place of quality actors. They get proper training. We get proper training over in the UK. I live in Cyprus, by the way. I am not in the UK, but I am British, born and bred. My parents, Greek Cypriot, who immigrated to the UK as young children, but I am British. I feel British as far as I'm concerned. I am British, and if you don't think I am British, up yours. That's how I feel, so that's who I am, and that's how I represent myself. Okay, so I believe that James Gunn is as pissed off as the fans are. And he's leaving Marvel at the perfect time, because he's literally jumping off the fucking Titanic, because the first ship to sink in New Hollywood is going to be Disney. I promise you that, because of what they've done and what they've become. Growing up, Disney was a beautiful place. It was magical. I loved Disney. I remember my parents not being able to afford to take us to the cinema. And every time a Disney animated movie or a short was being released in theatres, I couldn't go and watch it. I remember when Mickey's Christmas Carol was being released for a limited time only in theatres, I couldn't go. Years later, when I bought it on VHS as a fucking adult, oh man, I appreciated it so much. So I loved Disney as a kid. So to despise them now, it really does pain me. It's sad. This is not Walt's Disney. There's no question about that. So it could be that David Zaslav's decision to make James Gunn the creative lead at DC Studios could be a very brave decision under one circumstance: if he gives James the freedom to do what he wants to do. Now, he believes in James Gunn. Now, the comments he said that James is on a mission from God to save DC or to make DC great or whatever he said, I think I understand what he means now. I think James is very determined to kick out the creative bankruptcy and make great entertainment, because James said some interesting stuff like, if I have to delay a movie from its release to make it better, to make sure it's a quality movie, we won't be rushing movies out here, because he knows over at Disney and Marvel Studios it's become a bit of a conveyor belt. So he knows that. So my trust in James Gunn is getting higher and higher and higher, because he's not the man I thought he was. So yes, right, now I admit that in the past I have been unfair to James Gunn, because I'm a reactive fan, a passionate fan, and a human being. But today I want to stand up and say, you know what? I have been unfair. I should give him a chance. I need to go into Superman Legacy with an open mind, because it's been kind of difficult for me, because I haven't been able to see how James Gunn makes a great Superman movie. That's not fair, because Dick Donner had made a horror movie in Omen before Superman the movie, and look what he did with Superman the movie, right? Sam Raimi, like a horror comedy writer-director, look what he did with Spider-Man, and especially Spider-Man 2, which is his Dark Knight, if we're being honest. So we shouldn't judge people. And he's made the decision to come and do this. It's a huge decision, and he hasn't done anything wrong in terms of, creativity. And in terms of Guardians, in terms of Suicide Squad, as we've discussed many times. So I think that James Gunn could absolutely be the best thing that's happened to DC. And I understand some of my subscribers will be going, yeah, Mick, you're right. And some of my subscribers, or whoever's watching this video right now, will be saying, no, you're wrong, James Gunn is the devil. Oh my God, haven't you read his historical tweets? Oh my God. I know that. I know some of you hate him and some of you adore him. But I can't be an echo chamber. I can only be my own echo chamber. I can only give you what I'm thinking right now. I think the comments he's making about quality, I genuinely think he's as big a geek and nerd as we are. His knowledge on, geekdom is there. We know it's there. I think that they missed the boat not getting him to run Lucasfilm over at Disney. If they gave him the freedom to run Lucasfilm, I think he would have done an excellent job, because he kind of proved it with Guardians of the Galaxy. I think he'd have to tone down some of the humour, but as we know, I'm sure he can adapt himself. And that's what he has to do, excuse me, that's what he has to do with Superman Legacy. He has to adapt himself to the property he's working on. So, yeah, I think I'm starting to feel it with James Gunn, that he is a smart writer-director that can give us something really good. And oh boy, has James Gunn picked the difficult time to create, a connected DC universe when that trend is dying out. But in truth, it was a Marvel trend and not a trend universally. So he's certainly got a huge challenge. But I think he's capable of pulling it off, because I believe he loves entertainment, that he loves these characters. I'm starting to feel differently about James Gunn, and I think because of the things he says, because I feel he does love the shit that we love, I think it could be a very, very good thing. And time will tell. I don't want to sit here shilling James Gunn. That's not what I'm attempting to do. I've balanced it out. I've looked at the situation deeper, and I think if someone can take DC and have the right, do things for the right reasons, then we can get something special. When you're doing something like this, you can't just be doing it for yourself. You've got to be doing it for everyone, the business, the fans, and of course slightly for yourself as well, because you can only do what you think is right. You can't make stuff for yourself, 100% for yourself. So like the Snyderverse is made for Zack Snyder because he believes in what he's doing. It's an artistic vision. Again, I love Zack Snyder, I love the Snyderverse, but he weren't making it to uplift Superman or Batman. He was doing it because that's how he sees it. He wasn't thinking what's going to work. No, what's going to work for me and my vision. It's a different thing. It's how people work on the independent circuit. Unfortunately, Zack Snyder wasn't making movies for the independent circuit. He was making movies for Warner Brothers Pictures, one of the biggest studios in Hollywood. So you've got to think about what the studio wants, what's best for the IP, the profitability financially on what you're doing. But Zack Snyder isn't that kind of filmmaker, so then you don't bring in that type of filmmaker. We'll discuss it more a little bit later on. But Christopher Nolan is that type of filmmaker, so probably don't give Nolan the power to bring in Zack Snyder. Do you get it? And that's where the huge mistake was made. I love Nolan, I love Snyder. There's a place for them in the industry, of course there is. Very important filmmakers, brilliant, valid filmmakers. But a mainstream DC industry isn't the place for them, and we know that. But James Gunn could be the supremo that DC really need. I mean, look, James Gunn's a very interesting person. He went from being on top of the world with the first Guardians of the Galaxy, he became a rock star, if you like. Volume 2 was more reviled and people didn't like it as much as they did the first one. I thought it was a very good, darker take on the material. And Guardians 3 was perfection. I really, really enjoyed it. Loved the Suicide Squad, loved Peacemaker. But he's a very interesting guy because then he got cancelled. He was the victim of cancel culture as he became very, very political online and upset some hard right-wingers. So they found some dirt on him, exposed him, and he got fired. So the right-wingers thought they'd won. This guy can't be cancelled. He goes over to DC, makes the Suicide Squad. Okay, it doesn't make any money, does well on HBO Max, but I love the film personally. And so he reinvented himself. Then he went back, did Guardians 3, got unfired, and now he's the lead, he's the lead creative at DC Studios. So clearly this is a man that cannot be cancelled. Maybe he has got a lot of good connections in Hollywood. Who knows? I don't care about that. All I know is that this man's heart seems to be in the right place. And I wasn't always of that mind because James does talk a lot. There is an ego there, and I think sometimes that can make you think things that are not true about him. I think people do misunderstand James Gunn. And if you look at my historical tweets, I can be very negative about James Gunn. I've also been very positive about James Gunn. It's a balance, right? But today I'm saying I'm drawing a line under it. I want to give him a chance because I just feel he's a talented writer-director. He knows these characters. He knows these characters more than I do. That's absolutely true. I'm not a comic book reader. My interaction with DC is through live action. I've never lied about that. I've never pretended to be a comic book reader, right? So, I can say I've read this, that, or the other, but I'm not a serial comic book reader. And there's no point me pretending that I am. But it's the source material. it's important to refer to it, but not to copy and paste it. And, Zack Snyder, to his credit, did his own thing with those characters. It doesn't mean he doesn't know those characters. He decided to throw the origin material and the canon stuff out and do his thing. There's a lot of good canon in there, but there's no Fortress of Solitude in Man of Steel or BVS. He changed the meaning of the fortress and made Jonathan Kent Clark's fortress emotionally. And that's an interesting concept. Personally, I love the idea of the Fortress of Solitude, and I'm disappointed it wasn't in the Snyderverse, but it was never a deal breaker for me. It's not there, it's not there. I'll watch it in other, versions of Superman in live action and in animation where it does exist, and that's absolutely fine. But I think that James Gunn does respect the canon. I was very shocked when James Gunn and Peter Safran announced their Gods and Monsters slate, or the first part of it, and they referred to Superman about being about truth, justice, and the American way. That is a very old-fashioned kind of phrase that Superman used to use. I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way. It's very unpopular among elitists, especially left-wing, extreme left elitists. It's a very unpopular nationalistic thing to say these days. So I was shocked that they're going to do a very traditional Superman by saying that. It's proof that they're not going down some new version of Superman. This will be a very traditional Superman. So I think that's a very, very interesting thing to do. And again, we'll see how James Gunn goes at this, because this is something that he really has to take seriously. He has to look at the character. We're going to see how good he is. We're going to see if the overhype of him since Guardians Volume 1 is true, or if it's not, because it's all up in your work at the end of the day. When you get an opportunity like James Gunn's been given, I think that it can go either way, can't it? And I think, I have been of the negative mind, and like today, as I sit here in front of you, I feel a lot more positive and confident about James Gunn, because I think that this is a guy who has not been given opportunities in Hollywood to show us what he can do. He's already showed us what he can do. He's got a great directing style visually, right? He's not as visual as Zack Snyder, but he is a visual director in different ways, and the opposite ways of the way Zack is. He's a very good writer. He writes good characters. We know the kind of things he's done thus far. So, yeah, I'm very open-minded, not just on his work on Superman Legacy, but what he does with DC. I mean, you can kind of judge him in a way with the first part of the slate, the Superman movie, going with Batman, the Brave and the Bold, which is, I've never read the graphic novels. If there are any, someone can tell me about that. I mean, in terms of the animated series, I fucking love that. So they're going to take a lighter tone with Batman. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, that might not be everyone's cup of tea, but we will see what they do. And then you're like doing a horror movie with Swamp Thing, and that's going to be interesting. Does that mean he's introducing the whole Justice League Dark? I think he probably will as well. So, and I think an interesting prequel like Paradise Lost on HBO Max can also be a very, very interesting, unique way of doing Wonder Woman and threading through her history before we meet his version of Wonder Woman. Whether that's Gal Gadot or somebody else, we'll wait and see for that. So, yeah, he has a plan. He clearly thinks that, let's just say, Hollywood is in trouble, that the MCU has made mistakes. I've tried to criticise Feige to him before, and he's corrected me. Kevin Feige's my friend, blah, blah, blah. Fair enough. I stand corrected. But I still have my opinions about Kevin Feige. You're not going to change them. But it's clear that even though he respects Kevin Feige and likes Kevin Feige, he knows that bad decisions have been made with the MCU, which have destabilised the MCU. So some people keep on saying to me, Mick, he's going to make DC like Marvel. He's going to cast Marvel actors. Well, I don't see them as Marvel actors. I just see them as actors who can play a multitude of characters. That's why they're in the game. That's their job, to play one part and then play another and play a totally different character. with different demos and different personalities. That's the point of being an actor. There's no such thing as a Marvel actor. But if you're worried about the new DC Universe becoming like Marvel, I wouldn't worry about it. This guy will focus on the film where, while he threads through the same story through all the streaming shows and the movies and the animation. And I think he'll do it in a very different way to what Kevin Feige did. So I'd like to know in the comments down below, do you agree with me? Could James Gunn be the best thing that's ever happened for DC? Are you concerned about James Gunn? Are you a James Gunn hater? Let me know what you think of James Gunn running DC. Now, I want to talk about Zack Snyder and an interesting statement that he has made. Zack has talked about the negative divisive reaction to Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice. He said, I tried to make an intelligent movie, a thought-provoking movie, and the mainstream audience didn't expect that, didn't understand it, and expected a normal superhero romp. But you know what, Zack? I'm going to defend the general audience here. Basically, you didn't make this film for the general audience, but you expect them to understand it and to want it. Warner Brothers Pictures marketed this film like a typical superhero romp. So what did you expect, Zack? What did you and WB expect when you sold them a different movie? Now, I know the marketing is not your fault, or I hope is not your fault. WB were worried how people would react to your type of movie and what you were doing, so they lied to the audience. But that can only end one way. Because if you tell me there's a PS5 in that beautiful wrapping, and it's not a PS5, right, it's something else, then I'm going to be very, very upset. So WB told the audience this is going to be a normal, ordinary superhero romp, Batman versus Superman, who will win, and they didn't get that. So I don't think the audience were as upset about what you did rather than what they didn't get. I think some people were utterly disgusted with what you did and felt that you deconstructed the characters, disrespected the characters and have a lack of knowledge about the characters. Now, this is where I am. I love the Snyderverse. I've said it already on today's video. I say it every day for the pie eaters at the back. I love those films. I love all three movies that Zack made for DC. But I also understand where the people, the haters, are coming from. So even though I appreciate what Zack did, I can understand why they didn't want or like what Zack did. Now, hearing Zack talk there, it's pretty clear that maybe he doesn't understand why people have a deep hatred for what he does, and a deep hatred for the Snyderverse, and especially Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. But for me, it's simple to understand why people didn't like it, even though I come from a place of loving it. Crying at Superman's and Clark's funeral at the end of the movie. I do feel it. I think it's an excellent movie. But no movie isn't without its flaws, but it's not really about its flaws. You're taking Batman and Superman and you're presenting them to a general audience. You're marketing it as it's going to be a typical superhero romp, but then it's not. How do you expect people to react when you have Superman saying things like, no one stays good in this world? I understand what you were attempting to do, Zack. I do. And I love it. Because in the end, he goes from that to sacrificing himself for humanity. So he doesn't believe what he's saying then. He's under pressure. He's got to save his mother. I understand where the character's coming from. But unfortunately, there's a lot of ordinary people who didn't, who are utterly reactive. And it's the studio's fault, Zack, for selling it that way. But also, you were making a film for the general audience, but you didn't make a film for the general audience. You made a film for a cult audience. And it's the cult audience who embraced Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice. So to be honest with you, Zack, I'm surprised that you're surprised to the reaction of Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice. A fine, fabulous movie, in my opinion, but the general audience don't want that type of movie for their heroes. They don't. The general audience rejected BVS, but more of the general audience embraced the Snyder Cut, Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. So that's an utterly, intriguing situation. Why is that? Why did they reject BVS but love the Snyder Cut? Because the Snyder Cut is more of an explanation about why BVS is what it is. It's only when you see the Snyder Cut where you go, yeah. So that's what he was trying to do, right? And you would have understood BVS even more in Justice League 2 and Justice League 3, where everything turns out the way it should be. Zack wants these characters to earn the right to be the iconic heroes, and that's the point. I understand it. I love it. But I understand why the general audience, the mainstream audience, may have misunderstood Zack Snyder's intentions. What happens is, though, that kind of thing goes from disliking something to a deep hatred of the director, abusing the director online, referencing the tragic loss of his daughter and making fun of him, calling him a bad parent, disgusting slurs like that. It crosses a line on the internet. It crosses the line online, and I can't defend that. But I can defend the general audience in why they didn't understand BVS and why they didn't get BVS, because it was never told to them that that's what they were getting. I've spoken about this already, the analogy. When Logan starts being marketed, right, the final Wolverine movie, when it was supposed to be the final appearance of, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, now he's going to be in Deadpool 3. I'm not a big fan of that idea, but we'll see how that plays out. But in the Logan marketing, you see it's going to be a dark, gritty movie. You totally get what it's going to be. They don't lie about the film in the marketing. If they did lie and say who wins, Logan or Professor X, right, then you're going to expect a big fucking fight between Professor X and Logan. I wonder who would win in that. Well, Professor X can just crush his mind, mate. He can fuck with his mind. He ain't got no chance, right? Let me know what you think. Who would win in a fight? A fight of wills? I mean, physically, obviously, Wolverine would kill him. But would he get the opportunity to kill him? That's the point. Let me know in the comments. Who would win a fight between Professor X and Wolverine, aka Logan? So the marketing for that film is very, very honest. It's not lying to you, right? So when you go to the cinema, you get not just exactly what you were expecting, but a lot more. But you're given all this, brilliant VFX, brilliant CGI in the marketing for BVS. You think it's like a long fight between Batman and Superman. It lasts 9 minutes. Now, because I get what Zack's doing, 9 minutes is fine length for me for Batman and Superman to be fighting. But the studio decided to call it Batman versus Superman, right? Which was a bad title. Because by calling it Batman versus Superman, you think the whole fucking movie is about them fucking fighting. And you expect more than a 9-minute fucking fight by two epic characters. The studio dropped the ball in the title, the framing, and the marketing. And Zack Snyder was presenting a movie to the general audience, but he was making it for a cult audience. So you were all to blame for the misunderstanding that happened with this movie. What did you fucking expect? You presented it in the wrong way. You titled it the wrong way. Not you, Zack. You didn't like this title either. The studio titled it in the wrong way, marketed it in the wrong way. What did you expect? You can't blame the audience for being confused when you don't tell them the movie you're going to give them. It's like Superman the movie being plugged as this, wholesome movie, but then Superman's got a fucking fans and he's a fucking vampire and he's literally, kissing Lois Lane on the neck and sucking her blood and she becomes a fucking zombie, right? What are the audience going to do in 1978? They're going to go fucking mad. They thought they were going to see a beautiful, sweet Superman movie. Of course, that's what we got. Do you understand? You can't mislead people in the marketing. I remember they were plugging on Sky a season finale for X-Files, and they were trying to make it look like a shipper episode between Mulder and Scully and another character, like a love triangle. So I thought, I'm not watching this fucking shipper shit. Then, when I find out from other people it was an epic episode with a big dramatic cliffhanger. Whether if you market things in a certain way and they're not that way, of course you're going to upset your audience. And this is why, Zach, the general audience rejected your movie. Not on its quality, but in the way it was presented and sold to them. This has been Wednesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again in the next video. Till I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.